Welcome, and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Nikki French, the Customer Service Branch Manager at the Transportation Security Administration, and Rachel Schwind, the Customer Service Branch Support at TSA and Director at ASI Government. Thank you both for joining me. I want to start the conversation pretty broadly, and we'll narrow in some points here and there, but TSA is, of course, a high-impact service provider, a HISP agency, and we're hearing from a lot of HISP agencies on how they are setting this higher standard for customer experience in government. Nikki, we can start with you on this. From your perspective, what does it mean for TSA to be a HISP, and what does that focus mean for TSA delivering that higher standard for customer experience?
Yeah, thanks. So we were one of the first group of high-impact service providers, so we were designated by OMB in the original group in 2018. And it's something that we're really proud of. It just kind of recognizes the work that we do. We screen over 2 million people every single day at airports across the country. And it is an area that we should be focusing on as an agency. So we were really happy that OMB chose us, and we're happy that we've been able to work on it for the last 6-8 years.
All right, Rachel, over to you.
Well, and it's interesting because not all high-impact services are the same. HUD has a really good talking point about that, but particularly those in the realm of security, not everybody's thrilled with that experience. It's naturally one. There was the gentleman from HUD was talking about it once, and I was laughing, and I was thinking, how did you enjoy your pat down today? That's just a weird kind of topic. And I think the Department of Homeland Security kind of in general has that challenge.
Yeah.
But it is something that TSA is really passionate about. And what's nice about being designated as a HISP is that it creates kind of that structure that allows them to do the work that they were already kind of passionate about doing in the first place. But there's an avenue to communicate that to the public in a way that doesn't create burden for them. And there's a way to organize kind of how the agency collects that information and shares it across.
Yeah, and I think we are unique in that we do security. Our mission is obviously security, and so we have to balance the customer experience aspect with security. Whereas, I would love to work for recreation.gov. I always hate when I'm on a panel with someone from recreation.gov. I'm like, oh man, everyone's booking vacations, and here we are, we do a great job, but a lot of times TSA can unfortunately be seen as standing between you and your vacation. It's something that you have to go through. It's a security process. So it's not necessarily a good time.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point because, of course, the team over at recreation.gov has a fun job, but, I think Secretary Mayorkas...
Still challenging,
Yeah, still challenging.
But I think Secretary Mayorkas has brought up, when you look at the exposure, how many members of the public an agency touches on any given day, DHS is pretty high up there, if not number one. And so, that reduction of burden, I think is a huge piece of things. In terms of, we've heard folks at OMB say, what's get measured is what matters ultimately. And so in terms of what is being measured at TSA, what kind of data, what kind of metrics are you guys using to track those improvements and that reduction of administrative burden? What are you guys looking at there? Rachel, we can start with you.
Nikki just ran for the agency with help of over 200 stakeholders across the agency, the passenger experience survey. So that was performed at checkpoints, and a lot of we have 2 industrial organizational psychologists and a number of Paperwork Reduction Act subject matter experts and a variety of other people that weighed in on this, and federal security directors at the airports that helped us craft this survey that measures all of the metrics that are required for OMB A11 Section 280. Which we say really fast because it's
we do. I know. It just rolls off the tongue. Yeah, people look at me like, what?
Yeah, or you kind of roll it up together. But so confidence and trust is one of the questions. Customer satisfaction, of course. Maintaining professionalism and respect. Reasonableness of wait time and perceived wait time, those were 2 questions that we asked. And then satisfaction with the way security procedures were explained. As well as understanding of additional screening. So that would be that secondary, the pat down or the gunshot residue test. Best, worst aspects of the experience at the checkpoint, and then what resources that they use to prepare for their trip. Those were all some of the questions that we posed, and we had to map them to all of the OMB A11 drivers.
All right, and Nikki, anything further to add on what you guys found and what you guys are going to do with that now you have the data?
Well, I mean, what we found was fantastic. So our overall satisfaction was 93%. But my favorite statistic is our confidence score. And like Rachel said, the question was, I'm confident in the TSA officer's ability to keep air travel safe. And that was 94%, which is amazing, right? Like that's why every person at TSA comes to work every day. We're here to keep air travel safe. And so to have that feedback from the public, to hear that 94% of them were confident in our ability to meet our mission is really, really exciting. The other two that I'm really proud of are, again, workforce focused. We had 95% of people say that the officers they interacted with were professional, and then 95% said that they were treated with respect. So again, just a huge testament to the frontline workforce, and they don't get enough credit for what they do day in and day out. It's a very, very difficult job. I had the pleasure of doing it myself several years ago. That's how I started with TSA. So I can tell you firsthand that people don't come through the checkpoint and thank you every day. That is not a best practice. I wish it was. But yeah, this survey really, really just captured the great work that they're doing out there.
And TSA has done a really good job of using it kind of as a workplace morale tool.
Yes, absolutely.
So, the administrator was really passionate about communicating it to the workforce. There's been a number of messages. I think he's mentioned it in like 4 town halls. Yeah. And then they also recorded a video with the deputy administrator just describing the survey and the results and the appreciation for it. And I think it's like on all of the different channels that TSA has for the internal workforce.
Yeah, and it's something where sure, we conducted it, we put this together, we developed the questions, but the field is the one that they helped us. They're the ones that were out there actually collecting the information for us. We trained almost 100, right? Survey administrators across the 16 airports to go out there. So it was really a group effort, but all the credit truly lies with the field. I mean, they're the ones that the survey is about. So I can't say enough about about how proud I am of the field. And these were the results that I was certainly hoping for, and they do line up with the survey that we conducted in 2019. So for me, I'm just so proud and excited to be able to share this with the traveling public.
Yeah, and I think that's a great look behind the scenes of how the survey was actually conducted and how it was administered, because I think it speaks to a theme we've learned from a couple of agencies now looking at CX across government, is that the experience of the employees is really closely linked to that external facing customer experience that the public receives. And so if you could put a finer point on that, how do you see those things linked in, and what more can be done on the employee experience front to use that as a driver for a better customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're doing a massive project like this, you have to consider all of the people that are helping you. If you come in there and try to rule with an iron fist, that's probably not going to work, right? So we worked very, very hard to make sure that we provided really good guidance, but also a lot of wiggle room, right? So we conducted the survey over 2 weeks, and we let it, be up to the field which 7 days of this 2-week period will work best for you and your operation. We also provided training. I mean, most of the people that were conducting the survey for us, sure, they interact with the public every day, but they're not surveying people every day. They're not going up and asking people, hey, do you have a couple minutes? So there's some finesse that you need there. And then the retrospective meetings, I think also, those were really, really important. That was something that we knew we needed to do. If we're going to ask them to go out there and conduct these surveys, again, we wanted to provide them with the opportunity to give us feedback, right? Like to let us know, how did we do and what can we do better to make this survey smoother or easier in the future. What else would you say about the retrospectives? I mean, we got a lot of great feedback.
Yeah, we got great feedback from them. Some really awesome suggestions. Like one airport, and I just love this. So we had signs at the checkpoints so that they knew they were being surveyed by people who work for the agency. And some of them, we could only get laptops, so we had to get really creative with a lot of parts. And so the airport actually taped to the back of the laptop the sign that said like TSA is conducting a survey at this checkpoint, which was just so creative. Like we didn't suggest that to them, they just came up with that. They had a number of really great ideas like that. And because TSA is so passionate about customer experience, they even, as soon as we were done, were like, when do we get to do it again? It was like, wow, okay, this was
I
a lot
know.
of work, guys.
Yeah.
You know, soon, as soon as Congress can get the budget done.
Yep.
But no, that was exciting too. And then the other part that I really enjoyed learning from them was, you know, the touch points at the airport are a tricky wicket. So, you know, we talked about how security is kind of a difficult thing to measure because often it's not something people are thrilled about, but then it's also like the absence of a problem means success.
Yeah.
So that's just very intangible and difficult. And then you've got this issue where there's so many touch points in the airport that impact your experience, and there's a teeny tiny part of it that TSA has influence and control over. Less than what people think. Even like how the checkpoint is designed is not something that TSA gets to decide. And so in asking questions and the way that our industrial organizational psychologists help us design them, we were able to help them kind of focus on the checkpoint experience. So it was like from the moment you entered the checkpoint to when you left the checkpoint, this kind of thing. And what they found was it was an educational tool for passengers about what TSA had control over. The results were so positive, like Nikki mentioned. Towards the end, our survey administrators tried to look for people who looked angry. Like they were like, "Oh, that guy's been waiting a while. I'm going to go to him." And then they would start asking them questions, and they like, "I got something to say." And then it was like, "Well, actually, no. Everybody was respectful and professional, and you know." And then the free text question was, you know, helpful and comical at times. So we did have an open-ended question, like what else could we do? And there were some great suggestions, like, you know, provide snacks or water while people were waiting in the checkpoint. Something that would be difficult to, I think, convey to Congress in a way that they would
Yeah, I don't think that would work.
But you know, all of that was kind of very interesting, and then the airports kind of got something out of it because people who travel regularly at their airport now understand, oh, they just control the checkpoint, and it's just hard to discern when you've got like traveling's just tough, you know, to discern which portions the agency has control over and which they don't.
Yeah. And when we also provided, we knew that these airports, we got 16 airports to participate, and we knew that they would want their own results, right? So we had to go through with our very small team. We made 16 individual decks with their airport level results and compared them to airports of similar size. So that added another layer of work for us, but we knew that it was important to them. So it's kind of, you always want to make sure that if someone's helping you with a project that you're helping them out too, right? Like what's in it for me? So we knew part of that was going to have to be creating those individual airport level metrics so that they could, you know, make actionable changes on their side too.
All right, a really great example of this being done out in the field and done well. We're going to have to take a quick break, but we're going to jump back into this in a moment here. My guests today are Nikki French, the Customer Service Branch Manager at the Transportation Security Administration, and Rachel Schwind, the Customer Service Branch Support at TSA and Program Manager at ASI Government. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, on excellent, equitable, and secure customer experience, a closer look at high-impact service providers, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. Welcome back to Excellent, Equitable, and Secure Customer Experience, a closer look at high-impact service providers, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. My guests today are Nikki French, the Customer Service Branch Manager at the Transportation Security Administration, and Rachel Schwind, the Customer Service Branch Support at TSA and Director at ASI Government. To pick things up where we left them off before the break, we were talking about the employees and how they have a huge component of the customer experience here. Let's talk a little bit about training and training employees to deliver a better customer experience to the public. Rachel, what can you tell me about the training at TSA and how things are evolving?
Well, you know, Amira Boland did a wonderful job in a previous segment that you recorded with her of describing just what TSA did. So in the 2019 survey that was conducted, one of the scores that TSA really wanted to focus on was the explanation of additional security, or explanation of security procedures, and then additional screening. And so that was one of the biggest jumps in the results of the survey between 2019 and 2023. Went up 18% of the 5 airports that were in both surveys. And you know, one of the things that TSA has done in the time between 2019 and 2023, and a lot happened in that time frame. Everything changed about travel for a while there, was focus, kind of shift the energy to focusing on training the employees. And they introduced a training called CX Demystified. because it's a little tricky, again, in security, knowing what you can share with the public. What's security sensitive information? You know, what does customer experience look like as a transportation security officer that's prime responsibility is to ensure that you're safe. And so that training was introduced in 2020. And since then, they have trained 16,000 employees. It's a part of the new hire orientation. And, you know, we do think that probably influenced some of the understanding of additional, you know, security screening, because there's a lot of focus in that training on communication, you know, what to say and when. And then also kind of just understanding that a lot of what frustrates passengers also frustrates TSOs, you know, unprepared travelers, you know, flights changing at the last minute. That's not great for the agency either. So, you know, that was a big part of the training.
Yeah, and communication. I mean, we have a whole slide where, you know, it's just, the answer is communication, communication, communication. So what we found, you know, from running the contact center and being involved with the contact center since 2015, the root of almost every single complaint is a lack of communication or miscommunication. So we see these in complaints that escalate as well. It's just the officer maybe didn't explain the procedure, and so then the passenger is left filling it in, you know, filling in the reason for why they were selected themselves. And a lot of times it's just, when you're a TSA officer, you have said it 8 million times, right? Like, I just asked you if you had any water in your carry-on bag. You said you didn't. Now it went through the x-ray, there's a bottle of water. So for me to then explain it to you, like, it's just one of those things where as the employee, you've said it 100 times, but it's the first time that this passenger is hearing it. So that's kind of, you know, one of the main themes of that training is it's really important to keep in mind that you have to think of it from the passenger's perspective. Maybe they don't travel a lot. They don't spend a lot of time on TSA.gov. They don't read our standard operating procedures. That's not their job, you know? And so you can't go wrong by simply communicating. So it made a big difference.
And also, you know, CSB made a point to have people who have been in the field do the training. And I think that's a huge help. All the people, almost everyone on your team has spent time screening passengers at one point. Nikki did.
Everyone from the field.
You know, actually a lot of civil rights and liberties ombudsman and travel engagement are people that have been in the field.
Yeah.
And it's just very helpful because when you're telling a story about why a piece of customer experience matters and you can relate it to an experience that you had in the field, it's a lot more helpful to the people participating.
I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. We've been talking so much about the people and the process side of things. I think the third leg in that stool is usually technology. To shift gears a little bit that way, you know, we are in a day and age where emerging technology is doing new and exciting things every day. What are you guys looking at in terms of that emerging technology, and how might that potentially be a game changer for even further improvements in CX?
Yeah, so we have a lot of checkpoint technology, digital ID, mobile driver's license. We have some touchless pre-check things that we're testing out. And then on the contact center side, we're also going to be launching a virtual assistant on TSA.gov. And I think that's going to really help prepare travelers, right? So we know that TSA.gov gets about 4 million unique visitors every month. And a lot of those people do end up coming either to the TSA contact center via phone or email, or they reach out to us on social media. But how cool would it be if they actually didn't have to do any of those additional steps? There was just a chat feature right there that could answer their questions. We're thinking it should cut down on the number of calls and emails and direct messages, things like that, because people should be able to just get their answer right there. So I think that's going to really help prepare people, and that was one of our lower scoring areas. It was almost all good news, but 75% of people didn't use any TSA resources in preparing for travel. So we're hoping that this will help kind of boost that score in the future as well.
And the vast majority of contact center requests are information requests.
Yeah. So most of what we do is information, and so and I think what a lot of people do is really they call or reach out on social media or email to verify what they've read on our website, because there is a lot at stake for ID, in particular. if I've lost my ID and I read something that says, bring 2 forms of ID or bring your passport or whatever, I want to just like double check that, because it could be the difference of me getting on the plane or not. And so, the stakes are a little higher. It's not, or if it's a prohibited item, maybe you can or can't take it. You really want to know that ahead of time before you leave your house and then park your car and wait in line. So I think that the virtual assistant will be really helpful for that.
Awesome. And so that functions as like a chat bot where you would...
Yeah, it'll be a chat bot, and then we'll also have a live chat feature as well.
Okay, and I think that speaks to, navigating all these, the sprawl of federal websites where just because it's out there on a .gov somewhere doesn't mean that the people who need that information are, have a direct pathway to finding it. And so that's a great way to, I guess, cut down some of the burden of them, looking, can I bring this or not? Can I, is this a form of ID acceptable or not?
Yep.
And that cuts down on a lot of the time, it seems.
Yeah, and we also just redid, or will be redoing the next week or so, it'll be live. We have a program called TSA Cares, and that's specifically for passengers with disabilities and medical conditions, or anyone else who needs a little bit of extra help coming through the checkpoint. So we have a dedicated phone line, and that's, we want to make sure that those passengers are prepared, because they may have some different procedures. If you're, diabetic or you have an ostomy or something, there's some different procedures that you're going to go through. And so speaking to preparedness, like that's what we're all about. We want to make sure that you're prepared and you know what's going to happen, so that expectation is set and you're not surprised when you come to the checkpoint. So TSA.gov will have TSA.gov/TSA Cares, where all of that disability and medical information will be in one place. So previously it was kind of spread out throughout the website, and now we've consolidated. We did usability testing with people from different coalition organizations. So, I guess it's kind of technology, but we reached out, we heard from people, and then we had to reorganize. So I'm really excited for that to launch as well.
And that was something that came up even when we were doing usability testing of the survey. So, like I said, we were trying to look for different types of people to test the survey and see how they responded and which questions resonated with them and didn't. And, one of the big things is TSA Cares is also available for people traveling with children, because that's tricky, getting through the checkpoint with them. Going anywhere with children, it can be challenging. And so, that was one of the things that we kind of learned they didn't know about, and so even when we did a phone survey a couple years ago, and I took the opportunity to educate people even in that, about, are you familiar with TSA Cares? After they described, suggestions that they have for the agency. So that's pretty exciting that it's going to be up there and really easy for people to find.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a great thing to highlight, because I think, amongst all these priorities, a big focus of the administration's work has been, the diversity, the equity, the inclusion, and also accessibility, DEIA. And so making sure that regardless of your ability to interface with that information out there, that it's a level playing field for everyone there. I think we actually have to leave it there. We've covered so many great topics here, but thank you so much for taking the time to explain everything that's going on at TSA. Thanks again to Nikki French, the Customer Service Branch Manager at the Transportation Security Administration, and Rachel Schwind, the Customer Service Branch Support at TSA and Director at ASI Government. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search HISP.